Hey YouTube, JoeBoy here. So, this is my second video of the day, but again, chapter 945 of One Piece is out. So if you haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. Now that you have, let's begin. What an incredible chapter. I mean, we can just end the video here. That's all I have to say. What an incredible chapter. Usually, guys, I'm not big on the fights, but this one had some spicy matchups. There was a lot of juice behind the Law and Hawkins interaction. We can't call it a fight yet, but like, wow. You have Big Mom absolutely obliterating Queen, something that a lot of people saw coming, but the way that it just unfolded, man, top tier. And of course, Zoro versus Kiroshiro. I want to see that, even low-key in this chapter, like not as important. Sanji versus X-Drake. You have a Supernova versus essentially the Strats number 3. I want to see more of that. And the entire crew in various ways against the Oniwa Banshu. Boy, that girl pulled out a gun and called it a jutsu. Like, but yeah, this chapter had some serious matchups that excite me, but it wasn't only great because of the pairings. The pairings were good, but there was also a lot of fire, there was a lot of energy behind the fights themselves, generally speaking. I mean, I think that the Sanji X-Drake one was kind of meh. It was made up for with the jokes between Sanji and Zoro, but you're talking about Law and you're talking about Hawkins. I mean, Hawkins essentially won the fight on the onset because if Law is going to defeat him, he essentially has to kill his own crew. And a lot of people are saying out there, well, if Law used his abilities, I mean, he theoretically wouldn't kill Hawkins. I'm not entirely sure whether or not Law's abilities would work on Hawkins at all. If essentially his ability would pass right through him and then transition or transmit through the dummies so that he would split his own crew up into many pieces. Obviously that wouldn't kill him, but it also wouldn't put him any closer to being able to defeat Hawkins. But either way, context exclusive of the chapter is that Law is not in a good situation. The look on his face when he realized that this isn't going to work, that he's already taken an L and Beppo isn't even here. That's the kind of emotions One Piece gives me that I live for. Then on the other hand, you have a continuation of Zoro versus Kiroshiro. Zoro's still hot about what has happened to Yasu. Just thinking about the last two chapters, with the heat and the fire coming from Zoro and Law and Kid, man, this is like, I can't imagine One Piece being any better than this. And I'm not just saying that to say that, I'm not just saying that for clicks, man. I really just feel as though Oda's at his finest right now. In regards to Kid and Law, it literally took him one moment that he envisioned to completely change the story, in my opinion. Change the direction of the story, create powerful emotions. It's just so top tier. And you know, even talking about the Shogun, I would say that the Shogun's character is not all that different from other characters that we've seen throughout One Piece. I mean, like I said in another review, he's very similar to Spandam. You could say that he's similar to Wapol. But the Shogun also carries his own sort of unique energy and almost already rivals any other evil villain that I've ever encountered in the story, in the sense that of how badly I want him to get his face beat in. Remember guys, people were relatively disappointed with Wano up until recently, and much of this time was spent developing many of the new characters within the Wano arc, and I feel like it has really paid off. This is just another one of those things that I feel like is going to be really underappreciated. I've heard this argument before. Just because we're getting good stuff now doesn't make the stuff beforehand good. But I really think that the stage has been set masterfully. When you're talking about characters like Komurasaki Hiyori and the Shogun and Yasu and Kiroshiro, I really don't imagine myself caring more about these characters' stories and what the future holds for some of them. Even the new interactions that we got between Shutenmaru and Kinemon. There's an overwhelming sense of depth here that we haven't yet tapped into. That is only really fully appreciated given all the other panel time that Shutenmaru has been given. And don't even get me started about Big Mom, because I have a Big Mom obsession. You guys know about it. But I absolutely love her and everything that she does in the story and everybody's reaction to her. It's just so great. And I don't think we get to this moment where Big Mom is acting like she does now without all of the excruciating detail Oda went through in order to set it up through Whole Cake Island and now. All the various faction interplays, the matchups that are sort of being fomented, and all the various stakes that we are at this exact moment, I don't think it all would have been natural without this steady build-up. And I know that a lot of people out there are going to say that I'm overhyping this one, and that, yeah, it's great now, but it hasn't been great, and there might be, future downtime until we get to the real climax of this particular plotline involving Wano itself, and then maybe Kaido later, and the Marines, and anybody else who might show up there. But all I really want to convey, guys, is that right now, with everything going on, there is not a single thing, okay, that's not probably true, but there are very few things with the complexity of this arc and the amount of characters that I am not fully invested in at this point. And I consider that to be a feat. But yeah, guys, you can probably tell I'm really excited right now. Let's actually talk about the chapter itself, some details, discussion, etc. So to start off this chapter, I think that Oda, put a low-key panel in here, essentially confirming that Yasuo's objective was complete and that he very, very successfully tarnished the Shogun's reputation. I'm not going to say that I fully understand this panel, but there's a scene in which we can see people from Wano. They have dots above their head. And they're sort of covering their mouths, trying to hide the fact that they're laughing. They could be smile users, potentially trying to hide from the Shogun, but I don't really think that's the case. I think that these are residents of the Flower Capital, and they're simply laughing at the Shogun because he is running away from the battle, yelling that everybody should die, and they're still thinking about how he's afraid that the Kozuki will return. That's what I got from that, and I definitely see the story, continuing forward in this direction. So I don't know if the story is going to touch on this much in the next couple chapters, but I don't think that we should forget it. The Shogun right now to essentially all of Wano is a joke, even more so than he was before. This is going to matter, and this is going to play some kind of huge role. The next thing that caught my attention, and we touched on this briefly in the video that I made just before this one, is about the Oniwa Banshu and their leader, and he says this, I see, it's just like what Hawkins said. So apparently Hawkins has been reporting to him about what has been going on. He basically told them about the strats, and that's interesting. It's kind of funny to me because we started off this arc thinking that Hawkins would almost immediately join the strats. I mean, I don't think that we thought it was going to be immediate, but I don't think that we thought it was going to be 30 chapters later, or that he would play as critical a role as he is now, and really harming them. He's not taking his duties as a member of the Beast Pirates lightly. And so guys, if you remember, some of the oldest theories about Wano was essentially this is going to be an arc in which all the supernova team up in order to take down Kaido. And it's because of this detail here and some other things that happen in this chapter that have, I think, a lot of people really doubting whether or not Hawkins is going to flip sides or not. And I just kind of want to double down on this prediction. Hawkins is the guy who reads the probability. Essentially, the probability determines his course of action more so than anything else. And right now, the odds are stacked against the Strats severely. And I think that his cards would tell him as much. So it is not until Kaido is actually at some kind of disadvantage, Kaido is actually vulnerable, that I would see Hawkins stepping out of line and potentially flipping sides. But having said this, we also need to keep in mind that the other supernovas' journeys are going to end without them becoming the winners, without them becoming the Pirate Kings, all of them, for one reason or another. And so when it comes to somebody like Hawkins, I don't really see him being like the Kid Pirates as somebody who would directly confront Luffy in some kind of, a serious moment in the story, a battle of supremacy. So it could be true. I don't want to throw out the possibility. It could be true that Oda's entire vision for Hawkins as a character, essentially as a comparison to Luffy, essentially both of them having similar objectives, following the same path, and Oda wanted to show how these paths diverged. Whereas some of them continue forward, some of them fall in line, bow to the strength of a Yonko, and become irrelevant as leaders. So basically what I'm saying is that at some crucial point in the story, Hawkins has to step down and acknowledge Luffy as his better, give up on whatever rivalry might exist for now. And I really see that being the Wano arc, for one reason or another. But yeah, to talk further in depth about Hawkins, and more specifically Law, there was no win for Law in this chapter. I mean, he basically had a loss right from the start. If you want to beat Hawkins, you have to kill your own crew. That's not going to work. I've been hammering on this for a while now. Guys, I just want to tell you that the direction that Law is taking in this story is very, very interesting. And it honestly, based on some of the comments that I read whenever I talk about Law, it's going to surprise a lot of people, I think. All you really need to do is follow the story and follow the sequence of events. We started off in Zou, where Law begrudgingly allied himself with the Strats out of necessity, where it's specifically brought up that he said, "I'm not your friend. This is a temporary alliance in order to take down Kaido, because we need to take down Kaido because all of our lives are in danger, including the lives of my crew who I care about, so that's why I am here. So we need to work together, we need to formulate a plan together, and I need you on my side. We need to cooperate here." And the Strats straight up are not ones to follow plans, and they're not ones to cooperate for any length of time. As they've demonstrated on numerous occasions, they do what they want when they want. And I think that it contrasts pretty awfully with Law's, I think, controlling nature. Outside of the events of Punk Hazard and Dressrosa, if we start specifically in Zou, Luffy immediately goes to Whole Cake Island in order to retrieve Sanji, and that move in and of itself was very, very questionable. Law trusted him because of all the events beforehand, but what that has led to is essentially Big Mom and Wano. Obviously, she is an ally now, and right now she seems to be helping their objectives, but when she gets her memories back, I doubt that will be the case, and what will Law think about that? Again, just following the story in Wano, time after time, Law he almost pleads the Strats to continue forward with the plan, to stay low-key, and they just cannot do it. And what it's led to now is he and his crew are in danger. His crew is captured, and now his crew is in a situation that Law cannot even get them out of. And what makes this even worse is that his supposed allies are blaming his crew, blaming his mates, for leaking the plan and betraying the cause. Guys, I only think that it is going to get worse before it gets better. And based on the sequence of events, you have to wonder how long Law is going to be able to tolerate it before he finally gives up on the Strats and decides, you know, he's got to save his own skin. Like, just as a hypothetical here, if it doesn't appear as though the Strats are going to be able to save his crew, what can Law himself do in order to make that possible? Potentially reveal the plan, become a subordinate of Kaido. This is a serious question, guys. I just wonder what you think about this, because I'm not entirely sure. If Law starts to believe that there's no chance of beating Kaido, would Law be willing to join Kaido's crew and sell out his allies for the sake of ensuring the survival of his crew? That's just an interesting hypothetical, and that could totally come into play. What if right here and right now Hawkins told him, if you don't join Kaido, if you don't turn yourself in, I will kill a crewmate of yours, one every single day? What exactly does Law do about that? How does Law react to that? All legitimate questions in my opinion. But anyway, guys, the long and short story here is that I sense brewing tension between Law and the Alliance. They don't seem to trust him. He states that loyalty is important, yet he doesn't seem to be deserving of any of it. He's trying to control them, trying to help them, and his advice is going unheeded. The plan is failing every which way. The Strats are appearing to be in many ways inept, and the one who is falling on the sword is he and his crew, and at the very least he can't be happy about that. And of course, the Strats did defeat Doflamingo, and Law owes them for that, but at the same time Law saved Luffy, so the debt is kind of already settled and they're back to square one, and right now things aren't going so good. I want it known, guys, that I strongly believe that by the end of Wano, Law will come around, but there's a lot of story that might be existing in the middle which could complicate that, and I think that a lot of people are ignoring that. But yeah, moving on from this, I think that you guys know that I'm not big into the whole power scaling thing and analyzing fights to an absurdity of detail, but I do want to talk briefly about Sanji versus X-Drake. A lot of people are, this is pretty typical, right? Sanji took a blow from X-Drake, oh my gosh, Longy. I don't think that Sanji was portrayed very well in this chapter, or in the last 2 chapters, or for the last 400 chapters, to be honest with you. But one hit from X-Drake is just not significant to me in any way, because I personally think that X-Drake is stronger. X-Drake is a supernova. He's a rival captain to Luffy. That's an extremely difficult fight for Sanji. One that, honestly, I don't see him winning if it were to go all the way to its end. But yeah, guys, I don't want to talk too much about this because I'm already being bombarded on Twitter for sharing my thoughts. It's a total shitstorm. So I'm just going to leave you guys with this, which is that I think that there is a lot of growth that needs to be had from Sanji in terms of fighting. I know that he is a cook first, and that was sort of his main role in Whole Cake Island. But as far as Wano's concerned, mastering the raid suit is of the utmost importance, because if Luffy is going to be one day considered to be on the level of a Yonko, then he's going to need people that are of Yonko commander quality. Zoro and Sanji are one of these strat's main fighters, and they need to be on the level of somebody like Queen and Katakuri and Jack and other characters like that. And right now, Sanji's not even close, I don't think. I don't think that X-Drake is on commander level, and I don't think that Sanji is on X-Drake level, which means that he needs to grow significantly in battle, and I think that the story may be going in that direction here going forward. And I think that it's entirely possible that Oda is willing to sacrifice a little bit of Sanji's portrayal over almost the entire time skip for the sake of this character arc going forward. But I guess the last thing that I want to say about Sanji before we move on is that I think it's been emphasized again that Sanji's still struggling with his whole story as a Vinsmoke. In this chapter, X-Drake says, "I heard from the reports to think that you're a Vinsmoke," and Sanji says, "Don't you ever call me by that name again." And I think that this relates strongly with his internal struggle about using the raid suit. Yes, he used it already, but that doesn't mean that the struggle is completely gone. He's still fighting with the idea of using their tech and is not completely devoted or committed to it. And I think that that is a problem. Keep this in mind. But yeah, next up to battle, we want to talk about Komurasaki Hiyori, and so it's pretty clear that the Oni Wabenshu became suspicious of her. They went to go capture her, and Zoro was the one to save her. The moment between Zoro and Sanji was so good. It was so on point. But the line that has me most curious is at the end when Saki has this to say, "I did hide my face, but ... exclamation point, exclamation point." The thought is never finished. And the impression that this line leaves me with is the idea that Komurasaki's identity was essentially revealed to one or more members of the Oni Wabenshu. Or at least, man, that's gotta be a possibility. And that's huge if that's the case. Obviously, it isn't like officially confirmed here, and we'll see how that plays out in the future. But if they know that Komurasaki is alive, then that changes some things. But yeah, now talking about Shutemaru and Kinemon, I think the biggest topic of discussion is whether or not Shutemaru has decided to join the cause or not. In my opinion, guys, is no. And the reason is mainly because nothing has changed. Shutemaru is so mad that essentially he was unable to save Oden, and that all of his allies and everybody else abandoned him and left Wano to suffer for 20 years. So essentially what I think is going to happen, it doesn't have to be this case, but what I think is going to happen is Shutemaru is sort of going to show Kinemon something bad, something that sort of justifies his lack of hope, his lack of faith, or the reason for his anger. But yeah, last guys, we want to talk about Big Mom fighting against Queen. I wasn't sure how to feel about this beforehand, but yep, I liked it. Just taking in the whole experience, everything that occurred in this last chapter, from the moment that Big Mom arrived at the doors of the prison and smelled Oshiruko, to her confrontation with Queen, it's just so beautiful. But I want to make this very, very clear, guys. Last chapter, I thought that Big Mom might be raging. I don't think that this is a rage any longer. She might rage soon, but I don't think that this is a legitimate rage. Like when her eyes go swirly, that's when you know we are not seeing that. So I'm assuming right now that basically her attacking Queen is 100% a spoiled brat tantrum. Somebody who just doesn't know that the world doesn't revolve around them. No concept for what others think or what others want. Big Mom here is acting childish. And her attack on Queen could aptly be described as a kind of tantrum. Not a rage, I don't think. And yeah, I think that a tantrum and a rage are very different. But this is not saying that she is not close to raging, and in order to break her out of the cycle, she does need Oshiruko. And guys, based on this chapter, my impression is that it's here somewhere. I thought that Luffy ate it all, but Big Mom has the ability to smell it, unless the smell is just lingering. I don't know how much sense that makes to me, so I think that there is some, and I think that maybe somebody attempted to make more after they realized that all of it had gone and Queen had none, and they probably feared for their lives, right? Because there's no Oshiruko, they would be killed by Queen. So I think that a rage is going to be avoided right now. That's just my impression from this chapter. I think that the rage will be avoided, but it still could be a possibility further into the story, even if it doesn't happen here. But yeah, assuming that Big Mom is able to find some Oshiruko and she doesn't start raging and trample across all of Wano, There's two things that are important here. One, Big Mom's identity is revealed, and there's no doubt that it's going to be reported to Kaido. Kaido's going to know. That's going to be a big deal. And number two, I think Big Mom is going to continue traveling with the Strats as their ally because, I mean, the question was, as she arrives, like, is she going to fight Queen or is she going to get mad at Luffy? Like, somebody ate her Oshiruko. Yet here, Oda went out of his way to make Queen oblivious to the fact that Luffy or anybody else ate his Oshiruko. But in this case, Queen directly challenged her, said he wasn't going to share any. If Big Mom ends up getting it, then the only person that she will dislike will be Queen, who is a part of Kaido's crew, and not Luffy. And this gives really interesting character moments that, again, I'm still looking for between Big Mom and the Strats as she's traveling with them. I want to see interaction. I want them to get to know her. And honestly, just the dynamic between Big Mom and the Strats is it's fascinating regardless. But yeah, all that leaves us left to discuss is Queen. Now, first off, his Devil Fruit. I'm going to be honest, guys, I'm very mad on his Devil Fruit. Now, everybody's going to say, well, you know, that's what you get for making expectations in the story. You know, JB is just mad because his theory wasn't right. Guys, I had no theory about Queen. I had no idea what his fruit was going to be. I had no impression or any particular belief. There wasn't anything that caught my attention. It's like, I believe this. So I was just totally along for the ride for, you know, whatever it ends up being. And I just thought that the Devil Fruit it's just not my favorite. It could be your favorite. I'm not going to judge you for that. I'm not going to hate you for that. I'm not going to say that you're wrong for feeling that way. But the Brachiosaurus, it's just kind of like Kaku's fruit. I know that Oda did some interesting things with it. Not a big fan. I'm personally not very big on the herbivore zone Devil Fruits. I'm more of a carnivore kind of guy myself. And I think that Queen's Devil Fruit, in terms of cool factor, is significantly worse than X-Drake and Page 1 and King. But it's not bad. It's just meh. But yeah, with a fighting chapter, we cannot avoid talking about the fight. Does it make sense for Big Mom to one-shot Queen? In my opinion, it does. At this point, I think Luffy's had a very long fight with Katakuri. He's had a lot of time to train and develop all of his various kinds of haki. I think that Luffy is Yonko Commander level. Will he be able to defeat Queen or not? It's still a question. I do think that it would be a reasonable fight. They would have a very high difficulty fight that would last a long time. Luffy just wouldn't be instantly beat by Queen. So that's sort of where my headcanon stands with the power levels. You know, I don't like power scaling, but you kind of have to do it to talk about this. And Kaido one-shotted Luffy, and it was not even close. He overkilled him. This is just the power of a Yonko. You have to respect the power of a Yonko. They are on a different planet entirely. They're on another level. It's just they're monsters. So if Luffy is essentially Yonko Commander level, Queen is a Yonko Commander, Kaido one-shot Luffy and his fellow Yonko Big Mom, it would make some sense for Big Mom to be able to one-shot Queen. And I see a lot of people talking about Queen's durability as a zone type user. I think that Luffy has just as much durability regardless of what type of fruit he is because of his insane willpower. So Big Mom doing what she did to Queen makes a lot of sense. Does this mean that Queen, like based on what we got to see, down for the count? My personal impression is no. But I also think that it could make sense either way. I don't think that Oda is pigeonholed into, oh, well, Big Mom has to knock him out in one hit, or Oda has to have Queen get up after this point. I think that depending on how you rationalize it, how you choose to make sense of the details, it works either way. All that's really important is that there is a significant difference between Big Mom's power level and Queen's. But yeah, the reason that I think that it's possible for Queen to essentially take this hit from Big Mom, whereas Luffy got one shot by Kaido, is Big Mom isn't appearing to use any kind of particular haki. We don't know exactly how strong she is or how forceful this attack was. It's not like a named attack. This could have been for Big Mom a sort of like slap on the wrist rather than a punch to the face in terms of what it is that she could do. I think that this would be a lot different if we saw Big Mom use the Elbaf Spear. And of course, Queen does have a zone type Devil Fruit, which are noted for their durability, and Queen is a veteran. He also has just sort of like a tanky appearance to begin with, so I could see him absorbing a lot of damage. Now, all this being said, because of the huge difference between Big Mom's power level and Queen's, I do have to just wonder whether or not it's prudent for Queen to get up or not. Like, what is accomplished by Queen getting up? He's not going to defeat Big Mom. I don't think that that's in the cards for him. So I think that the story just needs to move forward from the fight. I think that Queen needs to be available for later in the arc, so Big Mom cannot fatally or significantly damage him to the point that you know he's incapable of fighting later in the arc. So, whether it's Queen is awake, but realizes he needs to escape, he needs to go report to Kaido, or he gets knocked out temporarily just so that Big Mom is able to get her Oshiruko, and then Chopper and company are going to be able to save Luffy and Killer and Kid and Kawamatsu. Long story short, guys, is I just think that we need to move on from this fight. Personally, I think that's what Oda probably needs to do, because, if we get to see any more of this fight, it should just be more of the same. Unless we are totally being deceived by what the end of the chapter suggests, and Big Mom is significantly, very significantly nerfed right now. Which I do not think is the case. But yeah, guys, that is pretty much all I had to say today. This chapter was incredible. Again, stop the video here. This chapter is incredible. It's always curious as to what you guys think, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I may have missed. Share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.